Imagine walking through a 5,000-year-old temple, and suddenly your voice echoes in perfect harmony as if the stones themselves are singing back. Or standing before a pyramid built with such precision that it encodes the golden ratio, planetary orbits, and the solar year, all without a single calculator, compass, or written equation. For centuries, we've admired ancient ruins as monuments to power, religion, or art. But what if they're also giant mathematical puzzles, carved in stone, aligned with stars, and tuned to frequencies we're only now beginning to understand? From the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Peru, from Neolithic Malta to classical Greece, our ancestors embedded astonishing mathematical knowledge into their architecture, often centuries before formal mathematics existed. Some of these secrets were lost until now. In this video, we'll uncover 15 real, verified examples of mathematical mysteries hidden in ancient structures around the world. These aren't conspiracy theories. They're archaeological facts supported by geometry, acoustics, astronomy, and engineering. So grab your explorer's hat, because by the end, you might just see ancient ruins not as relics of the past, but as time capsules of genius. When you look at the Great Pyramid of Giza, you're seeing more than just the last surviving wonder of the ancient world. You're standing before a structure that may hold one of history's most elegant mathematical secrets. Built over 4,500 years ago, with no wheels, no iron tools, and no written records of advanced mathematics, this colossal monument still baffles engineers, archaeologists, and mathematicians today. At first glance, it's a simple shape. 4 triangular faces rising from a square base. But look closer, and the numbers begin to whisper something extraordinary. The pyramid's original height was about 146.6 meters, and each side of its base measured roughly 230.4 meters. Now, take that base length, divide it by 2, and then divide the result by the pyramid's height. What do you get? Approximately 1.618. That number might not mean much at first, but to mathematicians, artists, and architects, it's legendary. It's phi, the golden ratio. The golden ratio appears everywhere in nature. In the spiral of a nautilus shell, the arrangement of sunflower seeds, even the proportions of the human face. For centuries, it's been considered the ultimate expression of harmony and beauty. Renaissance painters like Leonardo da Vinci used it deliberately, but the Great Pyramid was built more than 2,000 years before Da Vinci was even born. Even more astonishing is its relationship with pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. If you take the pyramid's perimeter and divide it by twice its height, you get a value astonishingly close to 3.1416, nearly identical to pi. Now, the ancient Egyptians had no known symbol for pi, so how did they build a structure that encodes both phi and pi with such precision? Some scholars argue it's coincidence, a byproduct of the construction techniques they used. One popular theory suggests that Egyptian builders used a sect, a unit of slope based on palms and cubits. A sect of 5.5 palms for a 1-cubit rise would naturally produce a pyramid with proportions close to the golden ratio. But even if that's true, it still means they stumbled upon one of the most mathematically significant shapes in the universe, using nothing but ropes and intuition. Others believe the alignment was intentional. The pyramid's sides are aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west, with an error of less than 0.05 degrees. Its location is also intriguing. It sits near the geographic center of Earth's landmasses, and its dimensions, when converted to ancient units, seem to mirror the scale of our planet itself. Some researchers even claim the pyramid's height in inches equals 1/10 billionth of the distance from Earth to the Sun. While that's debated, it adds to the mystery. What's undeniable is this. Whether by design or happy accident, the Great Pyramid embodies mathematical constants that wouldn't be formally described for thousands of years. It's as if the builders encoded a silent message in stone, a message that says, "We saw the patterns in the world and we built them into eternity." So the next time you see an image of the Great Pyramid, don't just see a tomb. See a triangle that holds pi in its height, phi in its slope, and perhaps a quiet invitation to look deeper into the numbers that shape our universe. Long before smartphones, satellites, or even the printing press, the ancient Maya were performing astronomical calculations so precise they still astonish scientists today. And they did it all using a number system carved into stone, painted on temple walls, and embedded in the very layout of their cities. But here's what makes their math truly revolutionary. They didn't count in tens like we do. They counted in 20s. This is called a vigesimal system, a base 20 numeral framework that shaped everything from trade to timekeeping. And unlike most ancient civilizations, the Maya didn't just have a symbol for zero. They understood it as a true numerical placeholder, a concept Europe wouldn't fully grasp until the Middle Ages. In fact, the oldest known use of zero in the Americas appears on a 3rd century CE Maya stela in what is now Guatemala. Now, why base 20? Scholars believe it came from counting on fingers and toes, 20 digits in total. But the Maya didn't stop there. Their calendar system, especially the famous long count, used layered cycles that functioned like a cosmic odometer. The smallest unit was the kin, or 1 day. 20 kin made a weinel. But then, instead of continuing with 20, they switched to 18 seis. So 18 weinels equaled 360 days, forming a ton which closely matched the solar year. After that, it returned to base 20. 20 tons made a katoon. About 20 years. And 20 katoons made a baktoon, a period of nearly 400 years. This hybrid system wasn't just clever, it was practical. By blending base 20 with a 360-day approximation of the year, the Maya could track celestial events with stunning accuracy. They calculated the solar year to be 365.2420 days, just 0.0000, 2 days off from the modern value. Their estimate of the lunar month was accurate to within 30 seconds, and they predicted eclipses, Venus cycles, and planetary alignments centuries in advance. You can see this math built into their architecture. At Chichen Itza, the pyramid known as El Castillo has 91 steps on each of its 4 sides. Add the top platform and you get 365, exactly the number of days in a solar year. The Temple of the Inscriptions in Palenque, which houses the tomb of King Pakal, features glyphs that record dates stretching over 1.5 million years into the past and future, using a positional notation system that rivals modern computing in its efficiency. Even more impressive is how they use math for ritual and prophecy. The sacred Sulcan calendar combined 13 numbers with 20 named days to create a 260-day cycle, possibly linked to human gestation or agricultural rhythms. This interwove with the 365-day Hab calendar to form a 52-year calendar round, after which time was believed to renew itself. Entire cities would hold ceremonies, extinguish fires, and relight them as if rebel again. So when you walk through the ruins of Tikal or Copan, you're not just seeing temples and plazas. You're standing inside a giant 3-dimensional calculator, where every stair, carving, and alignment encodes a sophisticated understanding of time, space, and number. The Maya didn't need paper or electricity to map the heavens. They had stone, observation, and a number system so advanced that it allowed them to think in scales most of us never consider. And in doing so, They left behind a legacy not just of pyramids, but of pure, elegant mathematics written in the language of the sky. On a quiet plain in southern England, a ring of massive stones stands silently against the sky. Built over 5,000 years ago, before the wheel reached Britain, before writing existed in Europe, Stonehenge has long been shrouded in mystery. Was it a temple? A burial ground? A healing site? Today, one thing is clear. It was also an ancient observatory, and a monument built with surprising mathematical precision. At first glance, Stonehenge looks like a simple circle. But look closer, and you'll see layers of intention. The outermost ring consists of 30 upright sarsen stones, each capped with a lintel, forming a near-perfect circle about 33 meters in diameter. Inside, a horseshoe of 5 massive trilithons, pairs of uprights topped by a single stone, frames the rising sun on the summer solstice. And that's no accident. For decades, archaeologists dismissed Stonehenge as symbolic. But in 1963, astronomer Gerald Hawkins changed everything. Using a computer, still a rare tool at the time, he analyzed the monument's alignments and found something astonishing. The heel stone, a large rock just outside the main circle, lines up perfectly with the sunrise on the summer solstice when viewed from the center. Similarly, the opposite alignment marks the winter solstice sunset. But Hawkins didn't stop there. He identified dozens of other sightlines that correspond to lunar standstills, eclipses, and even the 19-year Metonic cycle, the period after which the phases of the moon repeat on the same calendar dates. How could Neolithic farmers with no metal tools or written records achieve this? The answer lies in patient observation and practical geometry. They likely used ropes, stakes, and simple sighting techniques to mark the sun's extreme positions over many years. Over time, these markers evolved into stone, and in doing so, they encoded angular relationships into the landscape. Consider this: the angle between the summer solstice sunrise and the major lunar standstill is about 50 degrees. That same angle appears in the spacing of keystones. The Aubrey holes, 56 pits dug into the earth inside the bank, may have served as a counting system to predict eclipses. 56 is close to 3 times the 18.6-year lunar cycle, allowing priests or astronomers to track when the moon would reach its northernmost or southernmost rise. Even the stones themselves reveal mathematical thinking. The lintels on the outer circle are curved slightly inward, forming a true circle rather than a polygon. The joints between uprights and lintels use mortise and tenon woodworking techniques, unheard of in stone at the time, showing advanced understanding of structural balance and symmetry. What's most remarkable is that Stonehenge wasn't built all at once. It evolved over 1,500 years, with each generation adding, adjusting, and refining. This suggests a continuous tradition of skywatching and knowledge transfer long before formal schools or textbooks existed. So, Stonehenge isn't just a pile of old rocks. It's a calendar, a calculator, and a cosmic compass, all carved in stone. It reminds us that mathematics doesn't always begin with equations on a page. Sometimes it begins with someone watching the sun rise, year after year, until the pattern becomes clear. And in that quiet persistence, the first astronomers didn't just map the sky, they laid the groundwork for geometry itself. Rising above the city of Athens on the Acropolis, the Parthenon stands as a symbol of ancient Greece's golden age. Built in the 5th century BCE to honor the goddess Athena, it's often called the most perfect building ever constructed. But its beauty isn't just in the marble or the myth. It's in the math, carefully hidden in every column, step, and curve. At first glance, the Parthenon looks like a classic rectangle with straight lines and evenly spaced columns. But look closer, and you'll discover something extraordinary. Almost nothing is truly straight. The base of the temple curves upward slightly in the center. The columns tilt inward. Even the corner columns are thicker than the others. These aren't flaws. They're optical refinements, deliberate distortions designed to trick the human eye into seeing perfect harmony. Why? Because the ancient Greeks understood something profound. Our eyes deceive us. A long horizontal line appears to sag in the middle. Perfectly vertical columns seem to lean outward when viewed from below. So, the architects, Ictinos and Callicrates, engineered subtle corrections to counteract these illusions. The stylobate or temple platform rises about 6 centimeters at its center. The columns lean inward by about 6 centimeters over their 10-meter height, and the spacing between columns narrows toward the corners, creating a sense of rhythmic balance. But the real mathematical marvel lies in the building's proportions. The Parthenon's width is roughly 101 feet, and its height to the top of the pediment is about 62 feet. Divide one by the other, and you get approximately 1.618, the golden ratio. This number, revered for its aesthetic harmony, appears again and again in the building's design. The facade can be enclosed in a golden rectangle. The spacing of the columns, the height of the entablature, even the relationship between the inner chamber and the outer colonnade, all echo this divine proportion. Now, did the Greeks know about the golden ratio as a formal concept? Not exactly. Euclid wouldn't define it mathematically until a century later. But they clearly understood its visual power. They called it symmetry, not symmetry in the modern sense, but a deeper idea of commensurability, of parts relating to the whole in harmonious ratios. Even the column design reflects advanced geometry. The Parthenon uses the Doric order, but with refinements never seen before. The columns swell slightly in the middle, a feature called entasis, to prevent them from looking concave in sunlight. This gentle curve follows a precise mathematical profile, possibly derived from conic sections. And let's not forget the sculptures. The metopes and friezes that once adorned the temple weren't just decorative. Their placement followed rhythmic patterns based on prime numbers and modular spacing, creating a visual cadence that guided the viewer's eye around the building. What makes the Parthenon so remarkable isn't just that it's beautiful. It's that its beauty is calculated. Every decision, from the curve of a stone to the ratio of a room, was made to achieve balance, order, and awe. In an age without lasers or CAD software, the Greeks used ropes, plumb lines, and an intuitive grasp of geometry to build a structure that still defines architectural perfection. So the next time you see a photo of the Parthenon, don't just admire its ruins. See the silent mathematics holding it together, a temple not just to a goddess, but to the very idea of harmony itself. High in the Andes Mountains of Peru, nestled between jagged peaks and swirling clouds, lies Machu Picchu, a city built without mortar, without steel, and without a single nail. Constructed in the 15th century by the Inca Empire, this mountaintop sanctuary has withstood centuries of torrential rains, landslides, and some of the most powerful earthquakes on Earth. And it's still standing, not by luck, but by geometry. The secret lies in the walls. Look closely at the stonework, and you'll see something astonishing. Instead of uniform bricks, the Incas used massive, irregularly shaped stones, some weighing over 50 tons, carved to fit together like pieces of a three-dimensional puzzle. There are no gaps, no mortar, just stone pressed against stone with such precision that not even a blade of grass can slip between them. But here's the real genius. These walls aren't rigid. During an earthquake, they dance. When the ground shakes, the stones shift slightly, wobble, and then settle back into place, like a jigsaw puzzle that knows how to reassemble itself. This technique, known today as dry stone masonry with polygonal fitting, turns the entire structure into a flexible, energy-absorbing system. How did they do it? The Incas had no written language, no iron tools, and no knowledge of modern engineering. Yet they mastered stone shaping through patience and physics. Using harder stones like granite as hammers, they would pound and peck softer blocks into shape, testing the fit over and over until the pieces locked perfectly. The result? Interlocking joints with multiple contact points that distribute seismic forces in all directions. Even the shape of the stones matters. Many are trapezoidal, wider at the base and narrower at the top, which lowers the center of gravity and increases stability. Doorways and windows follow the same trapezoid design, not just for style but for structural integrity. This geometry prevents corners from shearing under stress, a common failure point in rectangular openings. And it's not just the walls. The entire city is built into the mountain's natural contours. Terraces act as giant retaining walls, preventing erosion and absorbing shockwaves. Foundations are layered with gravel and sand to cushion movement. Drainage channels divert rainwater, keeping the ground stable. Every element works together like a living organism, responsive, resilient, and rooted in deep observation of the land. Modern engineers have tested Inca walls and earthquake simulators. While rigid concrete structures crack and collapse, Inca-style walls survive repeated violent shaking with minimal damage. In fact, after the 1950 earthquake in Peru, one of the most powerful ever recorded, many modern buildings were destroyed, but centuries-old Inca walls remained intact. What's even more remarkable is that this knowledge was passed down orally through generations of master stonemasons. There were no blueprints, no equations on paper, just hands, eyes, and an intuitive understanding of how stone, slope, and force interact. So Machu Picchu isn't just a lost city, it's a masterclass in applied geometry, a testament to a civilization that listened to the earth and built accordingly. In a world where skyscrapers rely on steel frames and shock absorbers, the Incas achieved the same result with nothing but rock and reason. And as earthquakes continue to challenge modern cities, engineers are turning back to these ancient walls, not as relics, but as blueprints for the future. Long before the Greeks gave us geometry textbooks, and centuries before Pythagoras was even born, mathematicians in ancient Mesopotamia were solving problems that would define Western mathematics for millennia. And they weren't just scribbling on clay tablets. They were building their knowledge into the very foundations of their cities. Nowhere is this more evident than in the towering Ziggurats of Babylon and Ur, where sacred architecture met surprisingly advanced algebra. The ziggurat was more than a temple. It was a cosmic mountain, a stairway between earth and sky, built-in stepped levels that rose toward the heavens. But to construct these massive structures with precision, Babylonian engineers needed more than faith. They needed math. And thanks to thousands of surviving clay tablets, we now know just how sophisticated that math really was. One of the most famous discoveries is a tablet known as Plimpton 22, dating back to around 1800 BCE. For decades, scholars thought it was just a list of numbers, but modern analysis revealed something astonishing. It contains a table of Pythagorean triples, sets of three whole numbers that satisfy the equation A2 plus B2 equals C2. For example, 3, 4, and 5, 12, and 13. These are the building blocks of right-angled triangles. Now, Pythagoras lived around 570 BCE, more than 1,200 years after this tablet was made. So the Babylonians didn't just stumble upon these triples. They had a systematic method for generating them, possibly using algebraic identities that wouldn't appear in Europe for another 2 millennia. And this wasn't just theoretical. Archaeologists have found that ziggurat staircases and ramp angles often reflect these exact ratios. A ramp with a rise of 3 units and a run of 4 units creates a slope that's both practical for processions and mathematically stable. The base dimensions of temples at and Nippur also align with these triples, suggesting that builders use them as a kind of ancient construction code to ensure right angles and proportional harmony. How did they do it without modern tools? They used a base 60 number system. Yes, the same one that gives us 60 seconds in a minute and 360 degrees in a circle. This system made fractions and divisions far easier than our base 10 system. Combined with surveying ropes and siding rods, Babylonian architects could lay out perfect rectangles and right triangles across vast distances. Even more impressive is that their math included quadratic equations, square roots, and even early forms of trigonometry, all recorded in cuneiform script on sun-baked clay. One tablet calculates the diagonal of a rectangle with sides 45 and 60, arriving at 75, the classic 3-4-5 triangle scaled up. So when you look at the ruins of the Ziggurat of rising from the desert sands of modern-day Iraq, you're not just seeing a religious monument. You're seeing the physical manifestation of one of humanity's first mathematical revolutions. The Greeks may have formalized geometry, but the Babylonians built it, literally, into the world around them. And in doing so, they proved that long before theorems were named after men, the truth of mathematics was already written in stone and clay. In the arid plains of southern Peru, stretching across nearly 200 square miles of barren desert, lies one of the world's most enigmatic landscapes. From the ground, it looks like nothing but cracked earth and scattered stones. But from the air, an astonishing truth emerges. Hundreds of enormous geoglyphs, some longer than a football field, carved into the desert floor over 1,500 years ago. These are the Nazca, and far from being random doodles, they reveal a civilization deeply fluent in geometry, astronomy, and large-scale spatial planning. Created by the Nazca people between 200 BCE and 600 CE, the lines include straight paths that run for miles without wavering, perfect spirals, trachyles, and intricate figures of animals like hummingbirds, monkeys, and spiders. But what's truly remarkable isn't just their size, it's their precision. Many of the straight lines align with cardinal directions or point directly to distant mountain peaks. Others converge at specific points called ray centers, from which dozens of lines radiate like spokes on a wheel. For decades, theories abounded. Were they alien landing strips? Ritual pathways, astronomical calendars? While no single explanation fits all, mounting evidence suggests the Nazca used these lines as a sophisticated geodetic and ceremonial system, one grounded in mathematics. Take the trapezoids, for example. These massive flat-top shapes, some over 1,000 feet long, have sides that meet at precise angles. Archaeologists have found that many align with the winter solstice sunrise, or the rising of specific stars like Sirius or the Pleiades. In a culture that relied on seasonal rains for survival, tracking celestial events was a matter of life and death. Even more fascinating is how they built them. The Nazca didn't need aerial views. Using simple tools, stakes, ropes, and sight lines, they could create straight lines over vast distances by aligning markers with distant horizons. For curves and spirals, they likely used a central peg and a rope of fixed length, essentially turning the desert into a giant compass. recent studies using satellite imagery and AI have revealed something even more surprising. Many lines connect to ancient aquifers and underground water sources. In one of the driest places on Earth, water was sacred. So these geometric forms may have served as ritual maps, guiding processions to springs or marking the paths of underground rivers only the Nazca could sense. And the animal figures? They're not just art. The spider glyph matches a rare species native to the Amazon, hundreds of miles away. The monkey has a coiled tail that mirrors celestial constellations. These weren't random choices. They were symbolic equations, linking earth, sky, and water through sacred geometry. What makes the Nazca lines so powerful is their scale and silence. They were meant to be walked, not just seen. Pilgrims may have followed the lines in ceremonial journeys, their feet tracing mathematical paths across the desert as an act of devotion. So while we may never know every secret the Nazca left behind, one thing is clear. They didn't just draw lines in the sand. They inscribed the landscape with a language of angles, alignments, and ratios, a vast open-air textbook of ancient math, waiting for us to read it. And perhaps, in doing so, we're finally beginning to understand what they were trying to say. Rising from the jungles of Cambodia like a stone mountain touched by the gods, Angkor Wat is the largest religious monument on Earth. Built in the early 12th century by King Suryavarman II, it was originally dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu. But look beyond its towering spires and intricate carvings, and you'll discover something even more astonishing. Angkor Wat isn't just a temple, it's a three-dimensional model of the cosmos, encoded with mathematical ratios that mirror the rhythms of the universe. The entire complex is designed as a mandala, a sacred geometric diagram representing the structure of reality in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. At its heart stands the central quincunx of towers, symbolizing Mount Meru, the mythical home of the gods. Surrounding it are concentric galleries, courtyards, and moats that map the cosmic oceans and mountain ranges described in ancient texts. But what makes this more than symbolism is the precision of its proportions. The outer wall measures 1,024 meters by 802 meters, a ratio of almost exactly 1.276. While that might seem arbitrary, scholars have found it closely matches the ratio between the orbital periods of Earth and Venus over an 8-year cycle. Even more striking, the distance from the temple's entrance to the central tower is precisely 1,440 meters. That number isn't random. It equals 24 times 60, the number of minutes in a day. Was this a deliberate encoding of time into space? The temple's alignment adds another layer. Unlike most Khmer temples that face east, Angkor Wat faces west, a direction associated with Vishnu and also with the setting sun. During the spring equinox, the sun rises directly over the central tower when viewed from the western entrance, creating a breathtaking alignment that merges architecture, astronomy, and ritual. Even the bas-reliefs tell a mathematical story. The famous Churning of the Ocean of Milk gallery stretches for nearly 500 meters and contains 88 asuras and 92 devas, totaling 180 figures, which may represent the 180 degrees of a semicircle, or the half year between solstices. Other carvings depict celestial dancers whose poses follow golden ratio proportions, echoing principles found in Indian temple architecture for centuries. Perhaps most remarkable is the scale of planning involved. Angkor Wat covers over 400 acres. Its moat alone holds more water than 400 Olympic swimming pools. To build it, engineers managed water flow, elevation, and stone transport with astonishing accuracy. using sandstone blocks quarried 40 kilometers away and floated down canals during the monsoon season. And all of this was done without modern surveying tools. Instead, the Khmer relied on gnomons, sighting rods, and a deep understanding of geometry passed down through generations of temple architects known as Stepwells. Their knowledge blended sacred texts with practical mathematics, creating structures that were both spiritually meaningful and astronomically precise. So Angkor Wat stands as more than a monument to a king or a god. It is a cosmic calculator in stone, a place where time, space, and divinity converge through the silent language of numbers. In every corridor, every reflection in the moat, every sunrise over its towers, the ancient builders left a message. The universe is not chaos. It is pattern, and they knew how to read it. When you think of ancient engineering marvels, you might picture pyramids or temples. But one of the most astonishing mathematical and chemical achievements of the ancient world wasn't carved from stone. It was poured. Roman concrete, the material behind the Pantheon, aqueducts, and harbors that still stand today, wasn't just strong. It was alive. And for over 2,000 years, its secret remained hidden until modern science finally cracked the code. Unlike modern concrete, which begins to crack and crumble within decades, especially in seawater, Roman marine concrete has only grown stronger with time. The 2,000-year-old breakwaters in the Bay of Naples are not just intact. They're more solid now than when they were first built. How? The answer lies in a precise, almost alchemical recipe that blends geology, chemistry, and an intuitive grasp of material science. The Romans made their concrete from a mix of lime volcanic ash from Mount Vesuvius, called pozzolana, and chunks of volcanic rock. When combined with seawater, something extraordinary happened. The seawater didn't erode the concrete, it activated it. Over time, it triggered a chemical reaction that formed rare minerals like aluminous tobermorite and philipsite. These minerals grow in tiny interlocking crystals that fill microscopic cracks before they can spread. This wasn't accidental. Archaeologists have found that Roman engineers carefully selected specific types of volcanic ash based on their silica content. They even adjusted the mix depending on whether the structure was on land or underwater. For marine projects, they used more ash and less lime, creating a slower, more durable reaction. In essence, they engineered a composite material with built-in longevity, a concept that modern materials science is only now beginning to replicate. What makes this even more impressive is the scale. The Pantheon's dome, the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world, has stood since 126 CE. Roman aqueducts carried water for over 50 miles across valleys and hills, their channels lined with concrete that resisted erosion for centuries. And the harbor at Caesarea Maritima, built in the 1st century BCE, withstood Mediterranean storms that would destroy modern ports. For years, scientists assumed Roman concrete was simply denser or better compacted. But in 2017, researchers at UC Berkeley used advanced imaging to discover the self-healing crystals growing inside the ancient samples. They realized the Romans had stumbled upon a form of reactive durability, a dynamic process where the environment becomes part of the material's strength. So while we often credit the Romans for roads and arches, their true genius may lie in this quiet, slow-burning chemistry. They didn't just build to last. They built to evolve. Today, engineers are racing to recreate Roman concrete, not just to preserve history, but to fight climate change. Modern cement production accounts for about 8% of global CO2 emissions. Roman-style concrete uses far less lime and can be made at lower temperatures, making it greener and more sustainable. In the end, Roman concrete teaches us a powerful lesson. Sometimes the most advanced technology isn't about speed or power. It's about harmony, with nature, with time, and with the hidden mathematics of matter itself. In the heart of France, beneath the soaring vaults of Chartres Cathedral, lies a hidden path paved in stone. It's not a crypt, not an altar, but a winding circular maze embedded into the floor of the nave. Known as the Chartres Labyrinth, it measures nearly 13 meters across and consists of 11 concentric circuits that spiral inward toward a six-petaled rosette at its center. Built in the early 13th century, it has no dead ends, only a single continuous path that leads pilgrims on a symbolic journey from the outer world to the divine cores of views. At first glance, it might seem like simple decoration, but this labyrinth is steeped in sacred geometry and medieval numerology. The number 11 is no accident. In Christian mysticism, 11 was considered a transcendent number, just beyond the completeness of 10, which represented divine law and earthly order. 11 signified the soul's passage beyond the material world, towards spiritual revelation. It also echoes the 11 faithful apostles after Judas's betrayal, a reminder of loyalty and redemption. The path itself is precisely 261.5 meters long. Some scholars believe this number corresponds to the 261 working days in the medieval liturgical calendar, excluding Sundays and holy days. Walking the labyrinth, then, wasn't just meditation. It was a physical enactment of a year's spiritual labor, compressed into a single, contemplative journey. What's even more fascinating is how the design reflects mathematical harmony. The labyrinth fits perfectly within a circle, itself inscribed in a square, the classic medieval symbol of the union between heaven's circle and earth's square. The 11 circuits are divided into 4 quadrants by a cross, aligning with the cathedral's own cruciform shape. This integration of architecture, theology, and geometry turns the entire floor into a cosmogram, a map of the soul's ascent. Pilgrims who couldn't travel to Jerusalem would walk this path on their knees, tracing the same 11 circuits as a substitute for the sacred journey. The act was called peregrinatio in loco, pilgrimage in place. With each turn, they moved closer to the center, symbolizing purification, penance, and eventual union with the divine. And the center? The 6-petaled rose is rich with meaning. 6 is the number of creation. God made the world in 6 days. The petals may also represent the 6 attributes of God: wisdom, understanding, counsel, fortitude, knowledge, and reverence. Reaching the center wasn't the end. Pilgrims would turn around and retrace their steps back out, reminding them that enlightenment must be carried back into the world. Unlike mazes, which are designed to confuse, labyrinths like this one have only one path. There are no choices, no wrong turns. The journey is guaranteed. This reflects a core medieval belief. Salvation is not earned through cleverness, but received through faith and perseverance. Today, the labyrinth is often covered by chairs, but once a year, on summer Fridays, the floor is cleared, and visitors walk its ancient path just as pilgrims did 800 years ago. Their footsteps echo through stone, tracing a silent equation of spirit and space. So the Chartres Labyrinth is more than a relic. It's a walking meditation encoded in geometry. A reminder that sometimes the deepest truths aren't found in straight lines, but in spirals that lead us home. In the rolling hills of southeastern Turkey, beneath a sky unchanged for millennia, lies a discovery that rewrote human history. Göbekli Tepe is not just an ancient site, it's the world's oldest known temple, built over 11,000 years ago, before pottery, before writing, even before agriculture. And at its heart, carved into massive T-shaped pillars weighing up to 10 tons, is a pattern that hints at something astonishing of geometry, and perhaps the stars. The site consists of several circular and oval enclosures, each ringed with limestone pillars arranged in what appears to be deliberate symmetry. Many of these rings follow a hexagonal layout, 6 or more pillars spaced evenly around a central pair. This isn't random. Hexagons are one of nature's most efficient shapes, seen in honeycombs, snowflakes, and basalt columns. But at Göbekli Tepe, they may have served a cosmic purpose. Archaeologists have long debated the function of this prehistoric sanctuary. There are no signs of permanent settlement, no houses, no hearths. Instead, the site is filled with animal carvings. Foxes, snakes, boars, and vultures, many positioned with striking intentionality. Some researchers believe these aren't just totems. They're star maps. In 2017, a team of archaeoastronomers proposed a bold theory. The central pillars in enclosure D align with the star Deneb and the constellation Cygnus, while other pillars point toward the bright star Vega, or the rising point of the Milky Way during the autumn equinox. Even more compelling, the angular spacing between certain pillars matches the 60-degree angles of a hexagon, a shape that naturally divides the circle into 60 degrees of the horizon. Why would hunter-gatherers, living in a world of stone tools and oral tradition, care about celestial alignments? The answer may lie in ritual and survival. In a time before calendars, the sky was the ultimate clock. Tracking solstices, equinoxes, and star risings helped predict seasonal changes, critical for foraging and early communal gatherings. Göbekli Tepe may have served as a ceremonial observatory, where knowledge of the heavens was encoded in stone to be passed down through generations. The precision of the carvings adds weight to this idea. On one pillar, a vulture holds a sphere in its wing, possibly representing the sun or a celestial body. Another shows a scorpion, which in later Mesopotamian astronomy symbolized the constellation Scorpius. These aren't crude doodles. They're stylized, consistent, and placed with care. What's truly revolutionary is the implication. Complex social organization and abstract thought existed far earlier than we believed. Building Göbekli Tepe required hundreds of people working in coordination, quarrying, carving, transporting, and erecting pillars with no wheels or beasts of burden. That level of cooperation suggests shared belief systems and shared knowledge. So Göbekli Tepe challenges a fundamental assumption that civilization began with farming, which led to cities, which led to temples. Here, it seems, the temple came first. And within its hexagonal rings, our ancestors may have begun their oldest conversation, not just with each other, but with the cosmos. In silence and stone, they asked the stars when to gather, when to move, and perhaps where we belong in the universe. And 11,000 years later, we're still listening. In the arid plains of western India, hidden beneath the earth like secret oases, lie some of the most mathematically sophisticated structures of the ancient world. They are called stepwells, elaborate, inverted temples carved deep into the ground to access precious groundwater. But these are far more than functional reservoirs. They are masterpieces of geometric art, where every wall, pillar, and landing reveals a stunning command of symmetry, pattern, and spatial design. One of the finest examples is Rani Ki Vav in Gujarat, built in the 11th century. Descending 7 levels into the earth, it stretches over 60 meters long and is adorned with more than 500 intricately carved sculptures. But look beyond the deities and dancers, and you'll see something even more remarkable. An endless play of repeating motifs, rotational symmetry, and mirror-reflected patterns that would not be formally described in Western mathematics for another 800 years. The walls of Rani Ki Vav and other stepwells like Adalaj and Chanbauri are covered in geometric tiling, interlocking shapes that cover surfaces without gaps or overlaps. You'll find stars with 8, 12, or 16 points hexagonal grids and complex floral rosettes that repeat in perfect rhythm. These aren't just decorative, they follow the principles of what mathematicians now call wallpaper groups, a classification of two-dimensional repeating patterns based on symmetry operations like. What's astonishing is that Indian artisans achieved this without formal algebra or group theory. Using compasses, straight edges, and generations of accumulated knowledge, they created designs that exhibit up to 4-fold and 6-fold rotational symmetry, some even approaching the elusive 5-fold symmetry seen in Islamic art. At Chonburi, the Stepwells' 1,300 steps descend in a perfect geometric cascade, forming a vast, mirrored zigzag that creates a dizzying optical illusion. The entire structure is bilaterally symmetrical, as if folded along a central axis. These patterns serve more than aesthetic purposes. In a culture where water was sacred, the stepwell was a place of ritual, rest, and community. The symmetry reflected cosmic order, the balance of the universe as described in Vedic and Jain cosmology. Walking down the steps was a symbolic descent into the womb of the earth, and the repeating patterns guided the mind toward meditation and harmony. Even the layout follows mathematical logic. Many stepwells are oriented precisely north-south or east-west, aligning with solar paths to maximize shade and minimize evaporation. The depth is calculated to reach the water table even in the driest months, while the step design allows people to access water at any level as the reservoir rises and falls. Modern mathematicians have studied these carvings and found that they intuitively solve problems in tiling theory, like how to fill a plane with non-repeating yet harmonious units. Some patterns even anticipate Penrose tiling, a concept not formalized until the 1970s. So the next time you see a photo of an Indian stepwell, don't just admire its beauty. See the silent equations in its walls, the geometry of devotion, carved not for textbooks, but for survival, spirituality, and the quiet joy of pattern. In stone and shadow, these ancient builders didn't just store water. They stored knowledge, one perfect symmetry at a time. In the highlands of central Mexico, a ghost city rises from the earth. A place so vast, so precisely planned, that even the Aztecs, who found it abandoned centuries later, called it Teotihuacan, the place where men become gods. Built between 100 BCE and 550 CE, this metropolis once housed over 100,000 people and covered more than 20 square kilometers. But what truly sets Teotihuacan apart isn't its size. It's the uncanny mathematical harmony that governs every street, pyramid, and courtyard, suggesting its builders saw the city not just as a home for humans, but as a mirror of the cosmos. At the heart of Teotihuacan runs the Avenue of the Dead, a grand boulevard stretching over 2 kilometers. Flanking it are the Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon, and the Citadel with its Temple of the Feathered Serpent. At first glance, the layout seemed ceremonial, but when archaeologists began measuring distances and angles, they uncovered something extraordinary. The entire city appears to encode celestial ratios. The distance between the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon is about 1.6 kilometers. From the Sun Pyramid to the Citadel, it's roughly 1 kilometer. That gives a ratio of approximately 1.6 to 1, astonishingly close to the golden ratio. Even more compelling, the spacing between key structures aligns with the orbital resonance of Earth and Venus. Over an 8-year cycle, Venus orbits the Sun 13 times, while Earth orbits 8 times, a 13:8 ratio that appears repeatedly in Teotihuacan's layout. Some researchers believe the city's main axis was aligned to the setting point of Venus at its southernmost extreme, a moment of great ritual significance. But the math doesn't stop there. The base of the Pyramid of the Sun measures about 225 meters per side. Multiply that by 4, and you get 900, a number that resonates with Mesoamerican calendrics. The sacred Tucan calendar had 260 days, and the solar Hab had 365. Their least common multiple is 18,980 days, or 52 years, the calendar round. Intriguingly, the perimeter of the Sun Pyramid in Tekosat, a local unit of measurement, comes remarkably close to values tied to these cycles. Even the city's orientation is precise. The Avenue of the Dead is aligned 15.5 degrees east of true north, not toward the rising sun but possibly toward the Pleiades star cluster, which held deep meaning in Mesoamerican cosmology. On certain dates, the sun would set directly behind the Pyramid of the Moon when viewed from the Sun Pyramid, creating a dramatic celestial theater. What's most remarkable is that Teotihuacan shows no signs of a ruling king or royal tombs. Instead, it seems to have been governed by a collective, perhaps priest astronomers who saw urban planning as a sacred act. Every structure, every platform, every drainage channel was placed with intention, forming a giant cosmogram where earth and sky converged. So Teotihuacan isn't just a ruined city. It's a stone calculator, a living equation that turned astronomy into architecture. In its silent streets, the ancients didn't just build a home. They built a universe and invited the gods to walk among them. Beneath the sun-drenched island of Malta, carved deep into golden limestone, lies a structure so ancient and so strange that it defies easy explanation. The House Saflieni Hypogeum is not a temple above ground. It's a sanctuary carved entirely underground, 3 levels descending over 11 meters into the earth, built more than 5,000 years ago by Neolithic people who left no written records, no metal tools, and no wheels. Yet within its silent chambers, modern science has uncovered something astonishing. This prehistoric complex may have been engineered to resonate at a very specific frequency, 110 Hz. That number might sound technical, but its effects are deeply human. At 110 Hz, sound waves interact with the human brain in unusual ways. Studies using MRI scans have shown that exposure to this frequency can shift brain activity from the left hemisphere, associated with logic and language, to the right hemisphere, linked to emotion, creativity, and even altered states of consciousness. In other words, the Hypogeum may have been designed not just to be seen or touched, but to be heard. As a space where sound itself became a spirit, the key lies in a small chamber known as the oracle room. When a male voice chants or hums at a low pitch inside this oval-shaped space, the sound doesn't just echo, it amplifies. The entire room vibrates, and the resonance can be felt in the chest and bones. Remarkably, this effect peaks at around 110 Hz, the same frequency found in ancient ceremonial sites across the Mediterranean, from Greek theaters to Egyptian tombs. How did Neolithic builders achieve this? Through geometry. The oracle room's curved walls, domed ceiling, and carefully shaped niches act like a natural Helmholtz resonator, a cavity that amplifies specific sound frequencies based on its volume and opening size. This isn't accidental acoustics. The precision suggests deliberate design. Every curve, every recess, every slope was carved to shape sound as carefully as light. Even more intriguing is what archaeologists found inside. Over 7,000 human remains were discovered in the Hypogeum, along with red ochre paintings, sleeping chambers, and artifacts suggesting ritual use over centuries. Some researchers believe it served as both a burial site and a place of oracular prophecy. where a priest or shaman would speak from a hidden niche, their voice transformed by resonance into a divine voice that seemed to come from the walls themselves. What's truly humbling is the context. This was built around 3600 BCE, long before Pythagoras explored musical ratios, long before the Greeks theorized acoustics. Yet these early builders understood how form affects sound, how space shapes perception, and how vibration can alter the human mind. Today, access to the oracle room is strictly limited to preserve its fragile environment. But those who have stood inside describe an almost eerie sensation, as if the stones themselves are alive, humming with a memory older than writing. So the Hypogeum challenges our assumptions about prehistoric people. They weren't just surviving, they were experimenting with sound, with space, with consciousness. And in the silence of an underground chamber, they may have discovered a truth we're only now relearning. That mathematics isn't just about numbers, sometimes it's about resonance and the quiet frequency of awe. From the sun-drenched courtyards of the Alhambra in Spain to the soaring domes of the Shah Mosque in Iran, a silent language of shape and symmetry unfolds across the Islamic world. It's not written in words, but in stars, 5-pointed, 8-pointed, 12-pointed, even 17-pointed, interlocking in patterns so complex they seem to shimmer with infinite depth. These are not mere decorations. They are masterpieces of mathematical art created centuries before modern geometry could explain. In a tradition that avoids depicting living forms in sacred spaces, Islamic artists turned to geometry as a path to the divine. The circle, with no beginning and no end, became a symbol of unity and eternity. From it, they derived stars, polygons, and tessellations that covered walls, ceilings, and floors in seamless, repeating designs. But what makes these patterns truly extraordinary is their mathematical sophistication. Take the famous Ziggurats tiles, decorative tiles with lines across at precise angles. For centuries, scholars assumed these were drawn freehand. But in 2007, researchers discovered that many medieval Islamic patterns, like those at the Darby Imam Shrine in Iran, use a technique nearly identical to Penrose tiling, a non-repeating pattern that wasn't formally described in the West until 1974. Yet these Islamic designs date back to the 15th century. How did they do it? With nothing more than a compass, a straight edge, and a deep understanding of rotational and reflective symmetry. Artisans used grids based on equilateral triangles, squares, or hexagons to build up complex star motifs. A single 10-pointed star might be surrounded by pentagons, decagons, and irregular shapes that fit together perfectly, without gaps, without overlaps. At the Alhambra in Granada, over 17 of the 17 possible wallpaper symmetry groups appear in its tile work, a feat unmatched anywhere in the pre-modern world. This isn't coincidence. It reflects a culture that saw mathematics as a form of worship. Every line was a prayer. Every repetition, a meditation on the infinite. Even more remarkable is the use of 5-fold and 10-fold symmetry. Patterns based on the golden ratio, because regular pentagons don't tile a flat plane easily. Creating such designs requires advanced planning. Yet in mosques from Samarkand to Fez, these forbidden symmetries bloom in dazzling complexity, suggesting artisans had intuitive grasp of concepts like irrational numbers and group theory. These patterns also served a spiritual purpose. By avoiding figuration, they directed the mind away from the material world and toward abstraction, the realm of pure form, where the divine could be contemplated without distraction. Walking into a mosque filled with these designs is like stepping into a living equation, where every glance reveals new layers of order and harmony. Today, Mathematicians and computer scientists study these patterns to understand how ancient artisans solved tiling problems that stumped Western scholars for centuries. Algorithms inspired by Islamic geometry now help design everything from solar panels to nanomaterials. So the next time you see a photo of an Islamic mosaic, don't just admire its beauty. See the silent dialogue between faith and reason? A conversation written in stars, built on circles, and rooted in the timeless truth that the universe speaks the language of mathematics. And in those shimmering walls, the ancients didn't just decorate space, they revealed its hidden structure, one perfect star at a time. As we've journeyed from the golden slopes of the Great Pyramid to the resonant chambers of Malta, from the star-filled walls of Islamic mosques to the earthquake-defying stones of Machu Picchu, one truth becomes clear. Our ancestors didn't just build shelters or monuments. They built equations in stone, prayers in geometry, and calendars in stone and sky. These 15 sites are more than ruins. They are testaments to a profound idea, that mathematics is not cold or abstract. It is woven into the fabric of the world, visible in the spiral of a seashell, the arc of the sun, the echo of the sacred chamber. And long before textbooks or computers, people saw these patterns and chose to honor them. What's most humbling is how they did it. With ropes, eyes, and patience. With chisels and observation. They tracked the stars for generations, shaped stone to match the music of the spheres, and aligned entire cities with the rhythms of the cosmos. All without a single digit on a screen. And perhaps that's the real message hidden in these ancient walls. That wonder and calculation are not opposites. That science and spirituality can walk the same path. That to measure the world is also to marvel at it. So the next time you see an old ruin, don't just see decay. Look for the ratios. Listen for the resonance. Feel the symmetry. Because somewhere in that weathered stone, a voice from thousands of years ago is still whispering a number, a shape, a secret. If this journey through ancient mathematical wonders inspired you, please give this video a thumbs up. It helps more curious minds discover these hidden patterns. And if you haven't already, subscribe and tap the bell, because we'll keep exploring the silent codes of history, one puzzle at a time. Which of these 15 mathematical secrets amazed you the most? Was it the self-healing concrete of Rome, the celestial grid of Teotihuacan, or the 110 Hz chamber beneath Malta? Let me know in the comments below. I read everyone. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, and remember, the world is far more mathematical and magical than it first appears.